Welcome to Legs Like Mine, the podcast, where we explore lipedema through the eyes of a patient, break down the latest research, and share real life stories of living with this often misunderstood condition. I'm Susan O'Hara from LegsLikeMine.com. I'm a lipedema patient, author, and advocate, and I'm so glad you're here. Whether you're newly diagnosed or deep into your journey, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Susan O'Hara, and today I want to talk about something I've been noticing lately, a pattern in lipedema research that I think deserves some attention. And Dr. Herbst or Dr. Wright or Dr. Amron, if any of you are listening, I actually have a question about this, and I would love for one of you to answer. So every single day, I check for new research on lipedema on a website called PubMed. Yes, every single day I check for research. It's become part of my routine because I believe staying informed helps me and it helps others in our community too. And I've been seeing this interesting trend over and over again. But before I tell you about the trend, I want to tell you something though. So if you go to PubMed, it has lipedema papers dating all the way back to December of 1950 when Allen-Heinz syndrome was first introduced. And that was the first time that lipedema was talked about in research. And over the course of time since 1950, there have been 616 papers published there about lipedema. What's interesting, though, is that most of this research has happened in the last few years. So, in the last 10 years, 485 of those papers were published. In the last 5 years, 355 of those papers were published. And in the last year alone, 91 papers have been published about lipedema. So, I don't want to sound like a big whiner in this podcast because people are doing research, and every single time a paper is written, a book is written, a new influencer or lipedema patient shares their story, someone creates a new organization, whatever, we're raising awareness. And that's why I encourage every lipedema patient to tell their story. And I'm always here to help people write books. As you know, I've written a lot of books about lipedema, and I don't feel like it's competition when somebody else tells their story or writes a book or does podcasting or whatever, because my purpose isn't to make money or to get famous. Who cares about that stuff? Like, oh my gosh, who wants to be famous? That would be terrible. Anyway, it's about raising awareness about this disease so that when the next person goes to the doctor sees that person and they're like, oh yeah, that's lipedema. It's not just straight up obesity, and has a little empathy, right? Because they know that by the time that person has gotten into the doctor's office, they've probably had a whole lifetime of shame and self-doubt and all the things we feel from having lipedema. Anyway, I digress. So yes, thank you researchers for even writing these papers, even though what I'm about to say sounds like a big whiny baby rant. So here's what I'm going to say. What I've been seeing over and over again recently are many of the papers being published recently are called systemic reviews. Now to explain, a systemic review is a type of research paper where the authors aren't actually doing new experiments or they're gathering new patient data. Instead, what they're doing is they're looking at the existing body of research, they're analyzing it, and then they're summarizing what's known and often what's still unknown. And whenever I was working for the government, we would call this a lit review, but apparently in the research world, it's called a systematic review or systemic review. And so this is my question for the doctors who are listening is, why did they do this? Why do people put a paper out there that's just basically stating what we already know? Is it to get their name out there? Is it so that they can say, yep, I'm a published researcher? Or is there actually some benefit for people performing a systemic review and systematic review and stating the obvious, which is there needs to be more research, right? So it sounds useful and it is in theory, but there's the catch. All of these reviews that are being done right now, they basically end with the same conclusion. And I'm going to read you a common one. And this is a direct quote from a paper that I read. It's it's the eye chart of verbal, right? A verbal eye chart. A lack of consistency exists in tool protocols, measurement locations, and outcome analysis. Limited reporting of clinometrics with data derived from small cohorts and heterogeneous populations impacted the ability to recommend tools for clinical practice and research. Various tools were used for objective lipedema assessment, however, consistency in approach was lacking. Further investigations are required to establish the validity and reliability and measurement and imaging tools, protocols, measurement points, and outcome reporting interpretation to quantify the physical attributes of lipedema. Wow, that sounds like so much governmentese, right? In plain language, researchers are using different tools, they're measuring in different places, they're using different definitions, and they're studying small groups of people. So it's hard to draw any solid conclusions. And because of that, they recommend dun 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 more research. Another example is from a paper that was just published in May of 2025, which is the reason I'm doing today's podcast because this is kind of like new research. This was by a Dr. Cifarelli in a literature called Obesity Reviews, and the paper is titled Lipedema: Progress, Challenges, and the Road Ahead. And here's what it says, quote, multidisciplinary research informed care is essential for managing lipedema, combining conservative therapies, tailored exercise, and liposuction for advanced cases. More research to better understand the understanding pathophysiology is critical to developing targeted treatments, improving diagnostic accuracy, and informing standardized evidence based care. Again, the theme is clear. We need better understanding, more research, more consistency, and more standards. And so here's the thing, this isn't just two papers out there. There are so many of the 616 total papers that basically say, hey, we need more understanding, more research, and more consistency. So, what do we, the patients, do while we wait for all this research to happen? While a lot of us are smart folks, we have our own careers, our own skill sets and stuff. I'm not a researcher, and it's probably too late in my life to become one. So we can be encouraged that researchers are looking into this all because not too long ago they weren't. But we can also be honest about the fact that progress feels slow. These systematic reviews may help lay the groundwork, but they don't always give us like real answers that we need right now, like how to get diagnosed earlier, how to track the progression of lipedema over time, or how to access effective treatment in our everyday lives. So, my goal on this podcast and in my work with Legs Like Mine and as the president of the American Lipedema Association is to keep reading, keep learning, and keep translating this research into real talk for patients who don't necessarily love reading articles on PubMed, right? I'll keep scanning PubMed daily so you don't have to, and I'll keep calling attention to what the research is saying and what it's not. If you've seen a study you want me to look into, send it my way. I go through them and I try to go back to historical things before I was really looking at the research to see if I can find anything that's interesting. And if you're a researcher or one of the lipedema specialists, like I mentioned, Dr. Herbst, Dr. Amron, Dr. Wright, if you're listening to this, thank you. We see your efforts and we are so grateful to you. And we need more of you doing original research that centers patients and brings us closer to evidence-based care that we can actually use. So thanks for tuning in today. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with someone who's tired of hearing, hey, we need more research and wants to understand why that keeps happening. Until next time, stay strong, stay curious, and take care of your legs like mine. If this episode spoke to you, or if you've ever felt unheard on your lipedema journey, please know this: you are not alone. We're in this together, and we're not stopping here. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening. I'm Susan O'Hara from LegsLikeMine.com. Be kind to yourself and keep going.